Well, these are the folks who can't get enough even before it starts. As Walter mentioned, Melody Barnes is now the Chief Domestic Policy Advisor in the White House. Before that, she was the Executive Vice President of the Center for American Progress, which is a think tank in Washington. Before that, she was the Chief Counsel on the Senate Judiciary Committee for Senator Edward Kennedy. So she has long experience working with the issue of immigration and can recount many of the ups and downs. We're going to talk about immigration specifically, and we're also going to try to situate it in the context of the demographic change, the really fundamental demographic change that we are living through, and the issues that is raising now and in the coming decades for American societies. But let me start on immigration specifically. The president earlier this year gave an impassioned and thorough speech in El Paso, making the case for comprehensive immigration reform. I think the first reaction of a lot of people when they heard that speech was, where was that focus and passion in the first 2 years of his presidency when Democrats had 59 seats in the Senate and a majority in the House? Why now more than then?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here with you. And second of all, I'm really glad you asked that question. Because to those people, I would say maybe you weren't paying close enough attention to the first 2 years of the administration. Because when you look back at what we were doing over that period of time, the president actually gave several big speeches on immigration. But more importantly than that, we also were focused heavily on trying to find a path to passing comprehensive immigration reform. And what we did then, and the speech in El Paso was really a public pivot point, but what we were doing during that period of time was focusing on the inside game, focusing on how to use those majorities that existed in the House and the Senate to try and construct a bill that could be passed. We spent hours and hours and hours providing technical advice, and Senator Schumer and Senator Graham were working together on a bipartisan basis, and we've always known that this issue is one that has to be forged with a bipartisan team. Historically, it has been. Reagan signed an 86 bill. There were 20 Republicans that joined Democrats to pass the McCain-Kennedy effort or to work towards passing that in 2006. So we spent a lot of time trying to work on that until those efforts fell apart. And then when you go back and you look at the lame duck session, we put a lot of resources and effort, administration resources and effort, into trying to pass the DREAM Act. And you think about it, this was a bill that was drafted in a bipartisan way. It had been voted on previously, and 12 Republicans had joined with Democrats to move this bill forward. We had Republican co-sponsors on the bill, but we still, though we could get a majority, couldn't get a supermajority, 60 votes, to get it out of the Senate. And this was after the president making calls, the vice president making calls. Secretary Napolitano has literally had about 80 meetings on the Hill on the DREAM Act and comprehensive immigration reform. My colleagues and I making calls, pressing, doing what we could, looking for alternate configurations. What if we put the DREAM Act with other high-skill pieces? What if we did it with H-2A, which, for those of you who don't rattle off immigration acronyms, is the agriculture seasonal worker program that has had bipartisan support? And we couldn't find takers for any of that. So I would say that much of what this boils down to is math. And we have to find a way to get not only a majority, but those 60 votes. And that means that we've got to find a bipartisan way to get it done.
Was there any point in those first 2 years where you felt there was a majority in the House, in the Democratic House, for a comprehensive bill that would have included a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants? Did you feel there was a majority in the House? And if there was, why didn't you press them to at least get you that far?
Because I think realistically...
Was there first?
I believe there very well probably was. I mean, looking at past efforts, looking at where the votes were, there were also a number of people who were concerned from border states and who were concerned about getting that done. And as a result, looking and saying, look, we know it's going to take 60 to get it out of the Senate, so before we take that vote, the Senate needs to step up and show what it can do. Yeah,
I'm going to come back to that point in a minute, but let's look forward now. Talk about both the substance and kind of the legislative politics of where you are at this point. First on the substance, any comprehensive bill, as the president said, and as the 2006 Kennedy-McCain effort, has three major components. It has tougher enforcement, it has a guest worker program for future flows, and it has some pathway to citizenship for people who are here illegally with various conditions along the way. If you look at those elements, particularly the guest worker program and some kind of pathway to citizenship, what is the case for doing that at this moment when so many Americans are unemployed?
Yeah, and again, another great question. I actually spent part of the morning today with business leaders in Aspen, people running hotels, running the resorts, running small businesses, and who are thinking about and talking about immigration issues. And they talk about what the pool of workers looks like who are actually applying for jobs here. And we know that this is an extremely sensitive time, 9.1% unemployment, an economy that's slowly coming out of the recession, but growing, and people asking that very question. And I would say to them that if you look at the real information, if you look at the facts, passing comprehensive immigration reform is critical to our economy and to moving forward into job creation. And that's because if we had passed comprehensive immigration reform, if we passed it this year, in between 2012 and 2016, we would increase GDP by 1%. We know that over a 10-year period, it's about a $1.5 billion increase in our GDP if we were to move forward with comprehensive.
Why? What gives you that increase?
Well, there's the issue of tax